So firstly, welcome to our careers in drug science. It is very exciting to have you all here, and I'm very excited for this event. My name's Anna, and I'm a member of the Drug Science Student Society, and I just help run some of these events. So for those of you who are new to Drug Science Student Society, we're basically an organisation that started a couple of years ago at Barts in London, and we've since spread to lots of different universities throughout the UK, and we've actually got a member chapter from Zurich at the moment, which is very exciting. All our students work in a whole different kind of variety of fields and different degrees, and do lots of different work on drug policy and creating research surveys and hosting events like these. If it's something that you would be interested in, then please just have a look at the Drug Science website. And I think under education, you can find the Drug Science Student Society page, and you can have a look and see if your organisation has an associated chapter, if your university does. And if it doesn't, then please get in touch if you'd like to be involved, or if you'd even like to create your own chapter. So that's all I wanted to say about that. I'm going to do a bit of housekeeping. So today's event will be recorded, but as attendees, we can't see or hear you. So obviously you're not going to be in the recording. If you do experience any technical difficulties or drop off the call, then just use the same link to rejoin. If you think that we're having any technical difficulties, then just pop it in the chat. If you'd like to ask questions, and we really hope that you do, then please just put your questions into the specific Q&A box, and that makes it much easier for us to get to them at the end. So the format of today's event, it's going to be about 2 hours, and we're going to have each of our wonderful panelists giving a 15-minute presentation on their area, and then at the end we'll have the Q&A. So if you have questions, pop them in the box and we'll get to them at the end. If it's for a specific person, then please just obviously put their name in. That'd be very helpful. Okay, so then I think we will start with Dr. Chloe Sakal, who is going to tell us about her work in the addiction services.
Great. Thank you very much, Anna. Can everyone hear me and see me? I'm hoping you can. So my name is Dr. Chloe Sakal. I am a mental health doctor, and I work in Bristol. Big shout out to everyone from Bristol. I saw there were quite a few of you in the chat there. So I currently work with the NHS Substance Misuse Services, but I've also done some research in the psychedelic and the cannabis field as well. I've actually got a PowerPoint. I'm a bit embarrassed I made a PowerPoint, but I'm going to share it and I'm going to do some slides. So here we go. Hopefully everyone can see that. Shout out if you can't. So this is my journey to where I am at the moment. So some of this might be a little bit medical student specific, but I've got some other experiences at the end that will apply to people who aren't in medical school as well. But I did science A-levels, then I went to medical school, which was a long old slog, 5 years. While I was at medical school, I integrated and did a neuroscience BSc as well. Once I graduated from medical student and I became a doctor, I did 2 years hospital medicine as a foundation doctor. I then went on to specialize in psychiatry, which was a 3-year core training. And I'm now, I have my membership with the Royal College of Psychiatrists, and I'm currently working in the substance misuse services in Bristol. So a little bit about what I do on a day-to-day basis. So this is what my week looks like. On Mondays, I run a inpatient detox ward. So I admit patients for 2-week detoxes from opiates and alcohol, and that's all kind of medically assisted. So I prescribe medication for them and just check that everything's going okay and that they're all right. And we have a great nursing team who look after them the rest of the week. On Tuesdays, I do teaching. So I teach medical students and other doctors, and I also do some research, which I'll speak a little bit more about in a minute. On Wednesdays, I supervise my nursing colleagues, and then I assess patients to do community alcohol detoxes. So in Bristol, we have a community detox service where patients come in and I prescribe medication to help them come off alcohol. On Thursdays, it's just a team meeting day. So we discuss referrals into the service, and then MDT stands for multidisciplinary team meeting. And I sit with the rest of my team and we discuss any problems or any issues that have come up. On Fridays, I don't work because I live the part-time dream for no other reason other than I just like working part-time. So that's quite nice. I occasionally do on calls as well, which I'm sure most people know doctors have to be on call, but that's once every 2 weeks. And that means people can contact me out of hours if there are any serious issues that need to be attended to, but often they're quite quiet. So that's my week. Once again, this is quite doctor specific. I'll talk about other general opportunities in a minute. But as a psychiatrist, we get lots of opportunities to look at other things, things we're interested in, and to do research. So we also have the opportunity to take time out from our NHS work where they hold our NHS contract open. So this is called an out of placement experience. This is something I did last year. So I took a year out of my NHS contract to work with drug science. And I worked on something called Project 2021, which was a medical cannabis registry. And this was a really fascinating project. In fact, we're about to publish the first set of data next week. But we essentially pulled the data from private medical cannabis clinics, looking at lots of different outcomes for patients, things like mood, quality of life, anxiety, sleep, to see how they were doing with a medical cannabis prescription. And we're about to publish that next week, if anyone's interested. So please do look out for that. I could have taken longer out if I wanted to. So psychiatrists can take up to 3 years out of their NHS contracts to do PhDs and things like that. But I decided to return to the NHS after a year. So I also get something called special interest sessions. So this is 1 or 2 days a week where you can choose to do anything really. And this is funded by the NHS and it has to be vaguely medically related. So some of the things I've done in the past is I've participated and helped out in research looking at MDMA assisted psychotherapy for the treatment of alcoholism. This is something we published, I think, a few months ago now. So the study's finished, but we were giving participants MDMA and then we were detoxing people from alcohol, giving them MDMA assisted therapy, and then following them up to see if they'd relapsed. And the results were really quite good. The relapse rates were much lower than our sort of comparative group. I'm also currently taking part in a psilocybin for depression study that's going on in Bristol, although unfortunately it's on hold at the moment because of COVID. Because COVID has ruined a lot of things for everyone, unfortunately. But that should be starting up again soon. So some of the other things I have also taken part in, I've done some of this in my spare time, but also some of this in my NHS special interest time. I currently work with the Loop, and they are a drug testing service in the UK. And I'm part of the senior management team at the Loop. And what we do is we provide drug testing services at festivals, events, and city centres. So when people go to festivals in the UK, they can actually bring us their drugs and we will test the drugs in real time using infrared spectrometry. And then we can tell the person exactly what's in the drug and provide them with harm reduction advice about how dangerous it is to take the substance, and if they are going to take it, how they can do that in a safe way. And we've also done that in Bristol City Centre a few times as well. We're hoping that these are going to start up. This is going to start up again soon. Unfortunately, because a lot of the big festivals have been cancelled again this summer. I think we're hoping to do Parklife and Kendal Calling. I think those two are still looking like they might go ahead, fingers crossed. But we're also planning to start it up again in Bristol City Centre, so people can just come down with their drugs. It takes about 20 minutes to test the drugs, and then we can tell people what's in it. So that's quite cool. The website's there. They are always looking for volunteers, especially if you have a healthcare or a chemistry background. So please do go to the website if you're interested in doing it. This has been something that's really quite close to my heart, just because I think it's really innovative. It's the first service that's done this in the UK to be able to provide people with real-time results about what is in their drugs. But also because it's really fun. I really like working at festivals. It's a really great environment to work with. Obviously, you get free entry to the festival as well, and you can go and enjoy the music after your shift's done, which is it's just really fun. Another organisation that I have been involved in the past, I'm not working with them at the moment, but this is an organisation called PsyCare UK. We're an organisation of they're an organisation of volunteers that provide psychedelic first aid at festivals. I think this is similar to what they have in the US, which is the Zendo Project. I'm sure some of my colleagues could correct me on that, but I think it's called the Zendo Project. But they essentially provide a safe space for people experiencing difficult trips at festivals. And once again, I really enjoy doing this work because I'm a big festival goer, and it's just really fun to work with a team in a way that reduces harm without stigmatizing drug use. So we essentially just let people come in and be looked after if they're having a difficult trip. And we work very closely with the medical team as well. So if things do become physically dangerous, we can take them to the medics, and the medics will look after them or potentially take them to hospital. And as a psychiatrist, one of my aims working with Psych UK in the past has been to avoid people getting sectioned. So something I do as a psychiatrist is I do have the ability to section people. So that's when people who are suffering with mental illnesses get detained under the Mental Health Act for their own protection or the protection of others as well. And in the past, people have been sectioned whilst they're tripping on drugs, which shouldn't really happen. But often it's difficult for professionals to know whether somebody is suffering with a mental illness, namely psychosis, or whether they are under the influence of drugs, and people can end up sectioned under the Mental Health Act. So this organisation can help to avoid that happening by taking patients, taking people and keeping them safe at festivals so they don't get taken into hospital and sectioned. There's lots of different roles that you can volunteer for with PsyCare. So I've put the website up again, but they don't just look for people with healthcare experience. They look for lots of things like if you've got experience with social media or writing articles. They're a great organisation. So if anyone's interested, please do volunteer. So that's probably me. That's quite a brief run through of all the things that I've done. I think we're going to do a Q&A at the minute. So at the end of this. So if anyone does have any questions for me at the end, I guess I will field them then. But thank you very much for listening.
Great, thank you so much, Chloe. I mean, that is what an amazing amount of things you do, and still have a Friday for Netflix.
I know.
That's the dream.
And Nintendo. Play a lot of Nintendo.
And Nintendo. Oh my God, that really is the dream. I have to figure that one out. Great. Well, thank you so much. I can already see we've got some questions in the Q&A, but if you keep sending them in, and we'll get to them at the end. And now I would like to hand over to Graham, please.
Great. Thank you very much, Anna. I'm a little bit jealous of your slides, Chloe. Can I borrow them? And I'll just talk to those instead. So I'm Graham Campbell. I was a consultant psychiatrist. I'm still in the habit of saying I am a consultant psychiatrist. I'm still a psychiatrist, but I'm not working as a consultant in the NHS anymore. So I thought I'd time myself, keep track of time, but I'd kind of take you through my journey really to how I got to where I am at the moment. So, and hopefully that will be helpful just to think about, so currently I'm working with DMT in one of the clinical trials. It's a phase 1 and phase 2A clinical trial with Imperial College and a company called Small Pharma. I left the NHS in October last year to do this after working for some time in an inpatient psychiatry setting. So a bit of a leap of faith. So sometimes I find myself wondering how I got here as well. And so I think, working it out has been helpful to me. So I'll take you through from the beginning. So the roots of my interests in all of this really, I think, started when I was really young. I was always interested in dreams, psychoanalysis, the mind, consciousness. And in my teens, when I was doing my psychology A-level and just kind of reading around psychology, I got interested in psychosis and schizophrenia, and then psychedelics as well, and trying to work out why people were taking psychedelics in studies in the 60s to kind of model psychosis and schizophrenia, reading about how distressing schizophrenia was, and then seeing images of people at Woodstock or something, kind of taking psychedelic and looking like they're having a good time and not actually experiencing schizophrenia. So all of these things triggered my my imagination and my interest. And then when I started medical school in about 1998, I read a book called The Ecstatic Imagination, which has a longer title, which always escapes me. But I think it was the psychedelics and the psychoanalysis of self-actualization, which just had loads and loads of trip reports, and then how all these experiences connected to, you know, deeper psychotherapeutic, psychoanalytic ideas. And that really, along with Timothy Leary's autobiography, that really stimulated my interest and made me start to think about the therapeutic potential of these substances. So I carried on through med school. I did a special study module about psilocybin, probably in sort of 2001-ish. But again, that was sort of focused on toxicology, a little bit about the experiences, but how to manage these things in a ER setting, as I was a medical student, an A&E setting. So I graduated in 2003. Little bit of traveling, a little bit of junior doctor work. Started psychiatry training in 2006, which was about 6.5 years of training, until I got my qualifications to be a consultant psychiatrist in 2012. I did an MSc in neuroscience at King's College, and so that came to an end in 2012. And then I started working on the inpatient ward. And for the last 8 years, I've worked on a male-only 20-bedded adult inpatient ward in Brighton and Hove. And I sort of did that for quite some time. It felt like quite a long time, really. Sitting in the same seat, seeing some of the same patients. But it's a job that I really liked. I really enjoyed. It gave me a lot of satisfaction. I really enjoyed working with the team. I enjoyed the patient work. I really enjoyed the type of work. It wasn't easy. It was always challenging. I think every day was challenging. But I found myself, working with people with serious psychosis, manic psychosis, even drug-induced, even psychedelic-induced psychosis, sometimes very, very severe depression, personality disorder, and it was satisfying work. So I did that for quite some time, and then in October 2017 there was a Royal College event which was about philosophy special interest group. And it was all about the philosophy of psychedelics and research in psychedelics and the healing models with psychedelics. And it was fascinating. There was Robin Carhart-Harris, Roland Griffiths, Rosalind Watts, all there talking. And, it kind of really, really stimulated my interest. But I might not have taken that forward if it wasn't for my friend Benji Waterstones, who was a psychiatrist who was there as well. And we got chatting, and he then, got an email address and said, if just email Ros Watts if you want to be involved. And I kind of hadn't even considered the possibility of being involved in the psilocybin for depression study, but I did email her. And then I started training for psilocybin for depression, the randomized controlled trial where they compared psilocybin with escitalopram, which has only recently been published, I think in the last couple of weeks. I started training to help with that study in February 18. And my role was to be an assistant guide. So I would carry on with my day job, try and sort of claw out a few days here and there, some research SPA time, which is kind of, I can't even remember what SPA stands for, special planned activities, I think. But yeah, time that I could use that wasn't just being on the ward and seeing patients all the time. So I did that. And that was great experience. I mean, essentially I now feel that was my training to do what I'm doing now. Joining supervision meetings, helping out with guiding some sessions, all the preparation, integration. So that was really, really useful. Alongside that, sort of thinking about back in Brighton, I joined the Brighton Psychedelic Society that was run by Dylan Burns, who's a counselling therapist down here in Sussex. So he was running book groups, and there was lots of discussion going on in those. And really, with Dylan and with a great team of therapists and psychologists, we thought we needed to get together and start an integration circle in Brighton. There was already one happening in London from Imperial, and Rosalind Watts and Michelle Baker-Jones had set one up. And then I think very soon after that, King's College had set up an integration group for people who had psychedelic experiences and needed somewhere to help them process it. So we set one up in Brighton, which was really well attended, and then within the NHS Trust, we were going to set up a psychedelic medicine special interest group. We actually were advised to change our name from psychedelic, as it was a little too stigmatized, 3 years ago. Might be different now. But we changed it to medicine assisted psychotherapy special interest group, which actually kind of felt like it was a better name, really, I think. So we did that, and we had meetings, and we were talking about the research, and we had great people to come and talk to us. James Rucker, who works at King's, Anil Seth came and spoke to us. And so that was a great set of meetings. And then we started as Brighton Psychedelics. We started organizing events at the local medical school. Again, Anil Seth, very grateful to him for talking with us. Matt Johnson happened to be in the UK, so he came and spoke as well at the same event. And so we were kind of really just trying to help increase the knowledge, help people learn about psychedelic medicine. So that's what we felt our role should be. So I had a few years of working in traditional psychiatry and psychedelic work, which was interesting, the juxtaposition of those two things, especially working with psychosis and mania. And as the Psylodep study was coming to a close in about early last year, it made me realize that actually I really enjoyed this work, and I really wanted to continue working in that way. So I emailed Robin Carhart-Harris and David Arizzo just with an email to say, I'm thinking about a change, and if there's anything that's coming up over the coming years, just think of me, because I could be ready for something new. And then David got back in touch about the DMT study, and I think what he was saying was that they needed somebody who was an experienced psychiatrist. I think I had enough experience, and I sort of fitted the bill. So that was kind of planned happenstance, is the kind of way I look at it. Really, it was kind of a bit lucky, I suppose. I've been involved and kind of trying to help with the education for a while, so I think that probably helped as well. So last year was just about kind of COVID and waiting and seeing what was going to happen, and then I was employed in the summer last year by Small Pharma, who were the sponsors of the study, and then very rapidly seconded to the clinical research organization behind an ethical wall, as I was employed by the company. So now I'm working full-time really at Hammersmith Medicines Research in North Acton in London, as the trial psychiatrist, looking after the participants coming through, so far, the healthy volunteers stage of our study, which is great. It's kind of my ideal job, I think, certainly for now. So it's so I wonder how that's happened. I'm enjoying the commute from Brighton as well, Brighton to London. So I was comfortable in my NHS job, and my training in the NHS for 17 years. I'd done that, and it was work I liked. It was a leap into the unknown. I think it's working out so far. I don't know how long I'll be doing this for. On a personal level, I think I am still very wedded to the principles of the NHS and the public service and the type of work we were doing. I'm still very much aligned with that. But it was quite a shift to leave that and leave everybody behind. But I've always been a strong proponent of the therapeutic relationship. I've had the deep interest in psychoanalysis, and I think when I think about it, it just feels like this was the right step for me to take. And I haven't regretted that decision at all. And when psychedelic therapy gets enough of an evidence base to be used in a public service, I'd really like to sort of help take that back to the NHS. So just to say a little, I've lost track of time, but I've got a few minutes. So that's kind of how I am where I am. I hope that is helpful. Just to say that the beginning of this year, I've started working with Maria Papaspirou and Tim Reed on the Institute of Psychedelic Therapy as well. So this is a new professional body, professional organization, primarily for people who have private practice in psychotherapy, who are already experienced therapists, to get more CPD and maybe training and experience and learning around psychedelic therapy. So people that might want to specialize in providing psychedelic therapy where it's legal and where it's possible, whether that's in research settings or in a more sort of traditional kind of healing space. But also people that want to start doing integration therapy as well. It's also an organization that's open to other people who are healthcare workers in other kinds of settings. So it could be doctors, it could be somatic practitioners, it could be other people in, occupational therapists, psychologists in the NHS. So this is an affiliate membership to kind of help with CPD as well. But what you don't get with that is actually going onto a register, a sort of psychotherapy register. But it'll allow for really good professional networks. It'll be an opportunity to specialize and work and learn how to work with expanded states of consciousness. And there'll be public events. There'll be an academic circle, which is something I'll be chairing. I consider myself an academic with a small a, because I think there's so many more people that are more academic than me, I realize, coming into this space. But I think I've been academic enough to get to work as a doctor in the NHS. So I'll be sort of chairing that. And the reason I bring it up really is because as we move into the future, there are going to be more clinical trials with psychedelics. There are going to be larger clinical trials with psychedelics. There's certainly, in the DMT study is still quite small. There'll be, if things go well, there'll be a sort of aim to move to phase 2B and phase 3 studies. So there's going to be a need for people who are really well trained. And so over the coming years, that need is going to increase. So I'd certainly encourage you all to check out the Institute of Psychedelic Therapy, and we can try and share a link, I think. They've got the first keynote speaker coming up. I think it's Monday the 3rd of May at 6 p.m. And actually there will be a discount for all of you as well. So if you don't mind me pitching this, there's going to be a bit of a discount. You can sign up for the normal fee and then select a drug science coupon that gives you £10 off that first event. And it's going to be about integration and the lifelong process of integration and healing, with some reference to ayahuasca experiences. So it should be really, really interesting. I encourage you to check it out. And I think that's where things are heading in the therapeutic space. I think, there's going to be a lot of need for integration, certainly as, also all of the work that's happening in the sort of therapeutic and research clinical spaces is encouraging people to use psychedelics more, recreationally and outside of these settings. And so there is going to be more of a need for integration groups and integration therapists to sort of, as a harm minimization approach really, and just to kind of support people through. So that's a bit about me. That's my journey. I hope it's helpful. And I will hand over to the next speaker.
Thank you so much. That was so interesting. And that sounds like a really fantastic opportunity for everyone here to get involved in. And I think it's really nice to hear about actually how you can kind of change your career, especially if you come from a medical background, being able to kind of move between things. So that was really great. Thank you. Again, lots of questions coming in. That's great. And please keep them coming in. And I'm going to hand over to Jonathan now, please.
Hi guys, I'm Jonathan Nadler, co-founder of a cannabis company called Life Group. So my 15 minutes will be slightly different to the previous two. I will give you a small pointed history of what Life Group is, but then I thought, because of how far cannabis has come in the last year, I'll then go through the different opportunities that are currently open in the market, and that covers everything from science-based roles all the way through to more kind of operational business type logistics roles. So the first thing to say is cocaine. Cannabis is in the same schedule as cocaine, morphine, ketamine, Schedule 2. So it can be prescribed. It has been in that schedule since November 2018. So we are in the point of commercializing medical cannabis here in the UK, and forecasts predict 340,000 medical cannabis patients by the end of 2024, with the UK being the fastest growth medical cannabis market in Europe. So lots and lots to happen in the next few years, and it's a very exciting, fast-paced space to be in. It's a strange one because we are operating as a commercial industry. You know, we have patients that are receiving medication on a monthly basis. Meanwhile, NICE are very rigid with their guidance on what ailments and conditions can be prescribed medical cannabis, and there is a lot of research happening in parallel to the commercialization of it, which is encouraging, to say the least. Although there was a stat the other day that there is still more being invested into understanding the shortcomings of medical cannabis versus the amount being spent on trying to understand the therapeutic benefit of medical cannabis for conditions and ailments, which I find bizarre. And please excuse the child in the background who have just walked into the house. So in terms of what you can do in the space, I mean, there is a lot of research ongoing. So there are universities that are doing some fantastic stuff into cannabinoid science, including UCL, Nottingham, Imperial, Lancaster, and I'm sure there's a whole list of others that I haven't mentioned. And they are looking at a number of different things. They're either working with sponsors like the NHS, so the first NHS RCT trial for refractory epilepsy kicks off imminently, and that's huge news for us as an industry, and it's very, very promising for these families of children with refractory epilepsy. We hope to see results from that within the next 18 months. And there is a whole bunch of other stuff going on into understanding the different cannabinoids that are found in medical cannabis. So far, we've been really hooked on CBD and THC for obvious reasons. It's the two that the doctors that are prescribing cannabis care about most, but there are lots of other cannabinoids that have yet to be researched. There's more than 144 cannabinoids that we know about in the cannabis plant, and that is a lifetime of research to understand therapeutic benefits of each of those cannabinoids. We know some of the minor ones have some very good therapeutic benefit and are used by patients for a number of different conditions alongside the main THC. But a lot more needs to be known about that, and also the terpenoids, you know, these small little things that people sometimes forget about. They also have therapeutic benefit, and we know nothing about it really from a medical sense. So lots of research to be done there. And then producers are also investing heavily in understanding what their applications, their medical cannabis applications are good for. So they're looking at proper RCTs, phase 2s, for example, that are ongoing now. And if you go into other parts of the world, actually, they are probably more advanced than we are when it comes to producers undertaking research for their particular application. But that said, some of the larger farmers, so it's not just the producers of medical cannabis, but some of the larger pharma companies are also really starting to heat up with regards to their research into cannabinoids, and some very good scientists come out of top universities in the UK over the last few years have gone in to take pharma jobs to continue their research and to hopefully come up with pharmaceutical grade product in the near term. So lots to be done there. There are lots of other stuff, lots of other businesses, lots of other jobs that you can get involved in. So as I say, it's commercial. So what else is happening? There's cultivation. Cultivation is something which hasn't been a subject matter for us here in the UK for the last 18 months, but suddenly it is. It's a very hot subject, and people are saying we should be producing domestically for our own medication for NHS to prescribe to their patients. We will see more licenses being given out for that, and that comes with lots of interesting job roles. So if you're interested in botany, I mean, if you've ever attempted to grow cannabis, you'll know the challenges that there are in growing good quality cannabis, let alone then working up a way to stabilize that genetic, so that if you're supplying an EU GMP certified medical grade product, you can ensure the consistency of it ongoing. So cultivation is a fascinating area. Education is also a very big thing. Our business, in fact, has an online education platform called the Academy of Medical Cannabis, and please do go and check that out. There's 40 hours of online training there, all completely free, apart from a couple of modules where you have to pay a small fee. It's translated into 8 languages, so I noticed that people aren't just here from the UK, but they are here from elsewhere, so please go and have a look. But there are opportunities for people that have a deep knowledge and understanding of cannabinoids, cannabinoid science, anything really to do with the plant, to go and work for people that are producing education businesses around the subject matter. If you are interested in extraction processes, there are jobs in extraction. So the use of CO2 extraction, for example, all the way through to the manufacturing of novel applications or finishing extractions into finished oils. These things are starting to become a very interesting point for the UK market, and there are 2 or 3 businesses that are set up to extract here in the UK, and more are popping up, and clearly to man those machines, to understand about consistency again, and to produce product that is medical grade. They need scientists, they need chemists. So please look into that if that's an interest of yours. Then there are medical liaison officers. You know, we have prescribing doctors. There are lots of them. There are lots more to come in the next few years. And there are lots of producers of different medical cannabis products. And it's very challenging to understand the difference between one and the next. So there are jobs as medical science liaison officers, where your role is to understand in detail cannabinoids and how they work and what the impact is of them for different medical conditions, and to go to doctors that have requested information or support on the subject matter and to educate them exactly on how things work. So there's those roles. If you are a doctor, then prescribing might be your bag. So at the moment, it's specialist doctors only on the GMC register, of which there's 90,000 here in the UK. But if you aren't a specialist doctor, which if you're just going through your studies, you won't be, then GPs still get a role to play here, as do pharmacists, as do nurses. Shared care. Shared care is when you are a stable patient and your consultant is happy to share care with another medical professional. So GPs can get involved with prescribing, if not performing the consultation, then at least working alongside a consultant to continue the treatment and care for those patients. Then there's a very much logistics side of the business. So, you know, we have procurement. We're bringing in kilos and kilos and kilos of cannabis flower and liters of cannabis oils. And that all requires attention. It needs someone that understands how to procure that type of product from manufacturers in different parts of the world, and how to work with the Home Office, the Medical Health Regulation Authority, and all the other governing bodies that regulate and ensure that product moves around the world in the correct manner. So that's another area that you can get involved with. On the technology and data side, there's a whole bunch of new job opportunities coming up. So we are desperate as an industry for people that have a deep understanding of data collection, a deep understanding of artificial intelligence, an understanding of writing code, of building softwares. We definitely need more of you in the industry, and the technologies that are being built are superior to lots of the things that you might have seen. So there are seed to sell supply chain softwares, making sure that you can monitor exactly where that genetic has come from. Phenomenal, just what we need as an industry. Doctors love it, the industry loves it. So there's technology in similar to 23andMe, so understanding that this can be a very personalized medicine. And therefore, there is the possibility to understand that if genetics of someone are X, then this combination of cannabinoids may suit that patient for their condition. So technologies built around that are absolutely a must. And then the more basic stuff, so building out pharmacy, online pharmacies, understanding how to go through clinical decision trees, algorithms that allow decisioning for patients to be either approved or disapproved for whatever action they're trying to take to get their next medical cannabis prescription. These are the things that we're building for right now. So that's just a snippet. Hopefully you guys find something in there that interests you, and I will pass the baton over.
Thank you so much for that. We've had so many questions, and I also didn't know that there were so many different roles available. So I think that's going to be really interesting to everyone who's listening and watching. So thank you so much. The other thing I was going to say, with all these fantastic questions that we're getting, probably slightly dependent on how long our Q&A is, but we're really going to be focusing on the ones that are very much kind of career focused. So we may not get to questions that are more about the outcomes and studies in this session, unfortunately, but hopefully in one of our upcoming sessions or events for the rest of the year, we might be able to delve into more detail on those. So let's now hand over to Paul, please.
Thank you, Anna. And thanks for the opportunity to talk to your audience today. So my talk is going to be a little bit of a combination of the previous three, and I'm going to give you a bit of background about myself, and then I'm going to talk about where I'm working now and what kind of opportunities there might be going forward, working for MAPS or for similar organizations. So my interest began in psychedelics, began when I was a teenager, like most people, I guess. In fact, it was in 1991 when I was watching the Oliver Stone film, The Doors, that kind of initiated the deep interest that I cultivated for many years after that. It was actually the William Blake quote, which really piqued my intellectual curiosity, which was, I'm sure everyone is familiar with it, but if the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite. Something that really appealed to me at the time and still rings true to me today. So throughout the next 4 years, I enjoyed what I considered to be a fairly normal student experience, all the while learning more about psychedelics and their influences on human culture and history. And then in 1996, I graduated from Sussex University. Shout out to Sussex University. With my degree, BSc, bachelor's degree in chemistry. Organic chemistry was my specialism. And after spending time loitering in Brighton, I returned home to start my career. Not really for a minute thinking that any of my earlier interests in psychedelics would be an area in which I might work in the future. Eventually, I settled in 1998 to start a career in clinical research. So I worked for 10 years as an employee, starting as a clinical research associate, working my way up through lead CRA roles, project scientist roles, operational manager roles. And then in about 2008, I think it was, I decided to be freelance so that I could continue to work at the coalface and without having to go up through the company too much and get further and further away from the real interesting work, which was the running of the clinical studies, the trials. So I worked for another 13 years until today, in various roles, again, program manager roles, study leader roles, and previously to working for MAPS Europe, I worked for AstraZeneca in clinical development there. All the while, I was conscious that I didn't want to specialize in any therapeutic area. I think it's quite easy for people who work in clinical research to sort of go down an avenue and to specialize in oncology, say, or neuroscience, but I didn't want to do that. My expertise, my speciality was clinical research itself and the conduct of clinical trials to good clinical practice standards. And then last year, I became aware of an opportunity to work with the MAPS Europe team. And actually, that was my first exposure to MAPS. I hadn't really heard of them before there. I know that's probably sacrilegious to say, perhaps in this audience, it is, but that was really the case for me. They were very much an American organization. For those people who don't know, they were founded in 35 years ago in 1986. In fact, we had just had our 35th anniversary. So the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, MAPS, is a non-profit research and educational organization with the aim of developing medical, legal, and cultural context for people to benefit from the careful uses of psychedelics and marijuana. Under the umbrella of MAPS, there are two organizations. There's MAPS Public Benefit Corporation, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of MAPS, which has a special purpose, which is to balance income from the sales of MDMA, once it's approved, with the social benefits of MAPS mission. And then there's MAPS Europe, who I'm currently working for. And like MAPS PBC, MAPS Europe is another wholly owned subsidiary. The primary work is completing the phase 3 clinical trials required to develop MDMA-assisted psychotherapy into an approved treatment for PTSD. So the bit of the history of this particular indication and MAPS work in Europe is that in 2018, in June, MAPS personnel met with the scientific advice working party of the European Medicines Agency, the EMA, and then later that month, MAPS received a written scientific advice about the phase 3 protocol and the overall drug development plans, with approval to proceed to a phase 3 trial in Europe. And the EMA agreed to accept for review the data that the MAPS is gathering for the FDA from their US centered trial as well. So that brings me to the MAPS Europe team. And it is a small team. It's only 11 personnel at the moment. And essentially, I am the program lead. So I oversee all of the clinical operations personnel. And in that team, we have a clinical trial leader. We have 6 clinical research associates, 1 for each country we're working in, 2 clinical trial associates or clinical study associates, a more administrative type role, not going to the sites and monitoring the results of the study. And of course, we also have a medical monitor. And at this point, I wanted to make clear that we do actually have 2 vacancies within MAPS Europe at the moment. The first one is for an independent rater who needs to be a fluent Portuguese speaker and probably based in Portugal, but at least in a similar time zone would be preferable. This person's needed to administer the various structured interviews to the participants that enroll in the MP18 trial, which is the trial we're currently working on, the phase 2 lead-in to the phase 3 study, which we're hoping to operationalize, probably starting at the end of this year, depending on the progress with the phase 2, of course. The other vacancy is for a UK CRA. Because we're such a small team, we're not really looking for beginners, unfortunately, but we do need someone who has at least a couple of years experience monitoring to GCP standards, specifically somebody who is familiar with the UK ethics committees system, IRAS, REX, R&D departments, all of that kind of bureaucracy that we heap upon researchers in this country. So certainly I would be very happy to hear from anyone who has got a couple of years experience as a monitor and is looking for a new opportunity. Get in touch with me through the panel, that's fine. So in terms of MAPS Europe, we're also supported by MAPS PBC in the USA. MAPS PBC in the USA is the organization which is conducting the phase 3 trials. They've already completed one of those trials, that's last year. And this year they started the second of their phase 3 trials, which they need for their FDA application. One of those 2 trials will be put together with the results from the phase 3 trial in Europe, with the aim of getting a license for MDMA-assisted psychotherapy for PTSD patients through approved by the European authorities. So as I say, MAPS PBC support the MAPS Europe team. We don't have any additional functions or within our small team, but we are supported by them. So there are all the other sort of functions that you might expect to see in any clinical research company. So that's regulatory affairs, CMC, that's clinical manufacturing control, into IT, of course, finance, and all of the other business dependent functions. As I say, in addition to the medical, clinical and regulatory roles within MAPS PBC, there are people working in, of course, in marketing, legal, IT, event management, finance, fundraising, communication, strategy, training, quality, HR administration, video, informatics. So there's a whole load of different disciplines that you could, if you wanted to, you could approach MAPS PBC, and there are a number of vacancies within MAPS at the moment. So if you're interested, then check out their website. You most likely, for most of those positions, you will need to be based in the USA, but I see that some of our attendees today are. So if you're interested, that's certainly something you can check out. And as I say, for the MAPS Europe team, we do need a couple of people at the moment, one Portuguese independent rater and one UK CRA. So a little bit about MAPS. The vision of MAPS, for those of you who aren't aware, is to envisage a world where psychedelics and marijuana are safely and legally available for beneficial uses, and where research is governed by rigorous scientific evaluation of the risks and the benefits. There's a sort of 4 guiding principles for their work. So one is to develop psychedelics and marijuana into prescription medicines, and that's obviously a big part of what I'm working on at the moment. The second part is training therapists and working to establish a network of treatment centers. Again, I have a sort of peripheral involvement in some of those activities as well, with our sites that are taking part in the phase 2 study in Europe. Number 3 is the supporting scientific research. And number 4 is educating the public honestly about the risks and the benefits of psychedelics and marijuana. So dealing with those points then, number 1, developing psychedelics into prescription medicines. As I mentioned, our main priority and our focus at the moment is very much to get an approval from the FDA primarily, and then following that from the EMA and other regulatory agencies for MDMA-assisted therapy into PTSD. There have also been trials with MDMA-assisted therapy and eating disorders, and I believe that study is in America right now, is ongoing. There's also been some completed studies which have been done with MDMA-assisted therapy. One was in anxiety associated with life-threatening illnesses. I think another one was connected to the treatment of social anxiety, and that was specifically with in autistic adults. There also have been studies completed for medical marijuana. One of those recently completed was in PTSD. And I believe that there's also been an LSD-assisted psychotherapy study done some time ago now but that was in illness-related anxiety. I suspect it was similar to the MDMA-assisted therapy indication, i.e. a life-threatening illness causing anxiety in patients. The second one again is the second point, rather, or the second aim of the of MAPS is to train therapists and to work to establish a network of centres. And to this end, there is such a thing as the MDMA therapy training program, which was established nearly 10 years ago now and has been ongoing for, across many countries. I think they've trained nearly 1,000 clinicians from across the US, Canada, Netherlands, UK, Israel, and many other countries. And this has all been done virtually, of course, during these difficult times. Trainees have come, and there is, I think, another training course coming later this year. It's probably too late to sign up for the summer cohort, because I think it starts in about 2 weeks from now in May. It's a 14-week online program. This is obviously for people who are already practicing psychotherapy, but who have an interest in learning how to administer MDMA-assisted therapy. There is an autumn 2021 cohort, which I think starts at the end of August and will go to the middle of December. So that might be something that, if there are psychotherapists or working on this call today, maybe you might be interested in looking into that. That's all the details you can find on the MAPS website. The third point that I mentioned, or the third aim of MAPS, is to support scientific research. One of the ways that MAPS does that is through investigator-initiated trials, so-called IITs, and a number of these are ongoing. In Germany, there's an MDMA-assisted therapy trial for major depressive disorder, MDD. There's an MDMA-assisted therapy trial for MDD in Norway as well. There's also an MDMA-assisted therapy IIT for PTSD in a high-intensity inpatient setting. And there's also the European Therapist Experiential Training Protocol. This is where therapists who are going to ultimately administer the MDMA-assisted therapy are training, and part of that training is for them to experience for themselves an MDMA-assisted therapy session. So they'll be given the MDMA in the same setting that their participants or their patients will undergo. And finally, there's an MDMA-assisted therapy trial for alcohol use disorder in the UK. And the last item is number 4 in terms of the objectives or the aims, is to educate the public honestly about the risks and benefits of psychedelics and marijuana. And to this end, and this is touched upon earlier, I believe, the Zendo project is one of MAPS's initiatives, and this provides professional, comprehensive harm reduction, education, and support for communities to help inform and transform difficult psychedelic experiences preferably into opportunities for learning and growth. And the staff that work for Zendo includes psychology graduates from all levels, bachelor's, master's, and PhDs, also clinical social workers, along with counsellors as well in various different disciplines in terms of counselling, transpersonal and so on. So there's a number of people, different roles across the Zendo project. So in summary, I can see that the clock's just clicked over past 6 o'clock for me, so I'll round up and sum up. And I just wanted to say that working for MAPS for me means that I get the chance to apply my expertise and my experience in clinical research to a field in which I'm personally interested in and actually quite invested. Working in PTSD treatment is also really rewarding because it is a debilitating illness, affects thousands of people worldwide, and there is a high degree of unmet need for effective treatments. Plus, the early signs from the previous trials that have been done for MDMA-assisted therapy, they do look very promising. And finally, because MAPS PBC is a public benefit company and MAPS itself is a non-profit company, It means it has a mandate to advance public benefit through access to healing. This means it actually has an anti-patent strategy, which to me is much more appealing than the relentless pursuit of profit. So it gives me a good feeling, it gives me a warm feeling inside.